Good morning. Welcome to our stakeholder debate, Polish Presidency and the European Green Deal. I'm Karolina Zbytniewska, Chief Editor at Euractiv Poland, and I will have a true pleasure and honor of chairing this important discussion. We have gathered an all-star panel of experts representing major institutions that are at the forefront of shaping Poland's and European Union's climate and energy policy. So our distinguished panelists are Katarzyna Smyk, Head of European Commission Representation in Poland, Adrian Kondaszewski, Director of the Department of International Affairs at the Ministry of Climate and Environment, Joanna Maćkowiak-Pandera, President of Forum Energii, Professor at the Florence School of Transnational Governance, and last but not least, Linda Culture, Executive Director at Strategic Perspective. So welcome again. Starting in January, Poland will hold the 6-month presidency of the Council of the European Union, facing significant challenges in terms of climate and energy transition. This presidency offers Poland a unique opportunity to co-shape EU priorities, particularly in how to implement the next phases of the Green Deal. The Polish presidency may also play a crucial role in addressing the EU ambitious goal of 19% emissions reduction by 2040, while balancing economic concerns and energy security issues. So let me turn to our speakers and start with Director Adrian Kondaszewski, who will be with us just until the second round. Therefore, I will include all debate questions in just these 2 rounds. So sorry in advance, but I know you are prepared. So Poland's upcoming EU Council presidency will coincide with the implementation phase of the European Green Deal. And as the Green Deal has already been adopted, the question now arises, and I would like to ask what role will Poland play in driving the implementation forward? What specific goals and initiatives does Poland plan to promote in this context throughout the presidency?
Thank you so much. Good morning. Thanks for inviting me, and I apologize truly for the fact that I have to leave earlier, but I join you from Luxembourg, where we have the Council for Energy going on right now. So I just have to leave the room to take part in this discussion. So yeah, I mean, you completely right that we are going to face challenges regarding European Green Deal. We need to go forward with certain policies, but the mood has changed. I think there's a bigger focus on EU competitiveness these days. When I left the room where ministers gathered, we had the discussion on Draghi report and the impact of the energy prices on EU competitiveness, on EU industries. So that also tells you something, that there is a mood within the Council where member states are focusing more on industries and how to make European economy more competitive outside. So I guess this is the mood that we will have during our presidency. Of course, the question of Green Deal is still valid. I mean, it's not going to go away. I mean, the implementation is in progress in some areas better than in others, but there's no turning back. So we will certainly try to go forward, but we also have to counterbalance this ambitious green policies with some more business-friendly approach. And this is the expectations that we hear from other member states, but also from the European Parliament. So we want to do precisely that. As presidency, one of our priorities will be competitiveness of EU economy. And that means competitiveness outside. We want to compete with other global players, but we also want to limit competition internally. between member states. And I think this is something that, especially here in our corner of Europe, is very much visible. That there is that there is imbalance when it comes to accessing certain technologies or accessing funds, or the fact that some member states are spending a majority of state aid to supplement their industries. I think it's unfair, and this is something that we also need to tackle during our presidency. So that all boils to a couple of elements that we want to focus during our presidency. And you know that industries is a huge challenge for Poland. It's a sector that gives us 25% of GDP. It also gives us 20% of jobs in Poland. And we also know that the European Commission has its also very much as a priority, and they work on the EU Green Industrial Deal. And there are a couple of elements that we would like to see there. Some of them are small, some of them are of bigger impact. For example, we would prefer to help industries to decarbonize faster. So that means we would prefer European Union to provide access to certain technologies to different industries. And I mean here hydrogen, I mean CCUS, maybe SMRs, so that they could reach those very ambitious decarbonization goals, which otherwise could be very challenging. We also want to focus on prices for industries. This is something that is problematic for many sectors. We know that those prices are multiple times higher than in the US. So we are also working with the Commission on that. And this is something that also Draghi mentioned in his report. But we also want to, and this is something that we hear from many countries and many industries, we also want to limit the burdens that the industries are faced with. And here we, as an example, always mention the ETS, which is a problematic for industries because we need more flexibility after 2030, where those free allowances will be under question mark. So these are the areas where we want to work with the European Commission on other countries. But the question of European Green Deal also applies in the same manner to societies as well, because some of the areas are also very much important for ordinary citizens. And when we discuss prices, we also have to remember about prices for households, which are also very expensive. And the bigger problem, I mean, the prices of the generation prices are one issue, but the bigger problem is also the fact of very and increasing prices of network costs, which will at some point cannibalize the benefits that we have from lowering prices of the electricity generation. So this is something that we also want to tackle. For Poland, given our weather conditions, heating prices are extremely difficult. And of course, an issue which is raised by many member states, and I think Commission is also thinking about it, it's the issue of ETS2, whether we should postpone implementation of that. This is something that will, of course, target ordinary households, but this will also have an impact on industries, especially when you consider that they also pay for heating or transport, which at some point they could pass on those costs on consumers. And I'll finish with an aspect which is a little bit aside, but also has a very important impact on what we want to do. When we discuss Green Deal, there's so many fake news and so much propaganda there that we see it as a real obstacle to having informed policies and debate about the goals of our energy and climate policies, not only internally in Poland, but also at the EU level. So one of the priorities of our presidency will be to fight this energy and climate disinformation campaigns that we face right now. And this is an issue which, as I said, I mean, it's problematic here at our Polish playground, but it's also very challenging at the EU level, but also globally. And we discussed that with institutions, but also with global players outside EU, which they also see an issue there. If we want to be successful in leading our energy and climate policies, we have to start with education and fighting those disinformation campaigns that basically question everything what we do in this area. So I'll stop here and leave some time for this. Thank you.
May I, because there is a follow-up from our chat, from Q&A chat, can we still therefore call the Green Deal a main European strategy for the future? But related to what you said, you were mentioning that Green Deal will include the introduction of ETS2 and the implementation of the system will, as you said, leads to higher living costs, which will, as you said, undoubtedly be felt by households across not only Poland, but by all EU countries and citizens. And Poland might play a significant role in shaping the new just transition policy for which Commission intends to increase funding. And I would like to ask, is there a plan of how to address this file?
I mean, of course, I mean, ETS comes with certain funds that should, to some extent, cover those additional expenses by households. So, but there is a debate whether those funds are enough to cover all of the expenses, and what will be eventually the impact of higher prices for electricity and heating and transportation costs for ordinary households, but also, as I said, I mean, it will have an impact also on entrepreneurs. So I think that the debate is there. I don't want to prejudge where it will finish, and I know that the European Commission is also thinking about the impacts of certain policies there on households. There are calls to postpone the introduction of the system before we have all available data, but it's a complex issue, and I'm not really sure whether it will be resolved under Polish presidency. So I'm sorry, but I don't have a clear answer for that.
No problem, just trying. Now the question to Director Katarzyna Smyk, also the introductory one. So what are the goals of the new European Commission in the context of the Green Deal agenda, and what conditions are we operating under?
Good morning. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, very well. So first of all, thank you for inviting me and thank you for organizing this very timely discussion. But the question on the goals and in general on the referring to the new commission a bit tricky for now, because as you know, the commission is under construction and the process is ongoing. The hearings of the commissioners are scheduled for the beginning of November, and we are working on the certain assumptions in this regard. So of course, I need to be very cautious in terms of what I'm communicating, because many things are simply unknown. But as for the general question regarding the goal of the new commission in the context of the Green Deal agenda, I can very easily quote Madam President Ursula von der Leyen, who said that we must and we will stay the course on all of our goals, including those set out in the European Green Deal. So there will be definitely continuation in this regard. But I think this was already indicated by my director from the Ministry of Environment and Climate, that there are new elements present in the debate. But I would start actually by the results of the election to the European Parliament there, because we are renewing the institution in a certain political context, and in this and the results of this election shows clear and significant change in terms of the anti-European parties that are represented in the European Parliament, that account for right now 26%, comparing to the 18% in the previous term. So we have an anti-European narrative growing, and there is a clear intention of, to change the method. So in terms of the goal, I will concentrate on the method and on the content, but the method is also important. So what I can expect, also following what has already been said, that our new goals and even the implementation of the European Green Deal and new commitments and new initiatives that the Commission is already announcing, like Clean Industrial Deal, will need to respond to the real and legitimate concern and expectations of the Europeans that were expressed in the elections. And then there is this motto that it's included in every and each mission letter that President von der Leyen sent to all the commissioners, candidates for commissioners, that we need to make Europe faster and simpler in the way we act and the way we interact with the citizens. So I'm expecting much more dialogue and much more a bigger pragmatism in what the EU and the Commission is going to propose in the weeks and months to come. As for the content, of course, it already been said that it's a clear focus on competitiveness. So we are going to build prosperous and competitive Europe with also focus on of course on competitiveness, on innovation, on business-friendly environment, and successfully navigating the green and digital transition. So I also read it as a certain willingness to support the process, to look at what works and what does not work, and certain openness, but we don't have much of the concrete commitment in this respect, because as I said, timing is very specific. But indeed, Clean Industrial Deal is going to be in the center of this discussion, together with the new ideas how to deepen the single market, how to invest in research and innovation, and how to boost digital transition, and how to increase investment and tackle the different challenges like skills and labor gap. So it will be a continuation with new elements that would very much follow what people want and expect. This would be my short reply, but there will be one last point that I would like to make in this intervention. It also follow-ups on what the director said about disinformation, because I also fully agree that we need more positive communication about European matters, and also including the whole climate and energy agenda, and including in Poland. That I would, as a head of the Commission representation in Poland, we are very much dealing with the communication. So we want to stress that EU is here to assist, to bring an added value, to support, and not necessarily to impose solutions. Yeah. So the language that we use, not only politics, but language we use, is really important, especially in Poland. But indeed, the subject of energy and climate is perceived as difficult and challenging. And on top of that, we have lots of the disinformation that we need to tackle. But the last point, it's in order to go on, in order to continue with this agenda, I'm pretty sure that we need to have our citizens on board. And I will stop here. and I will give a chance to other interlocutors to interfere. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So just probably not much more than yes, no follow-up question from our viewer, our guest, Marek Kozak. Has anything of the Green Deal survived? I think that this question has something to do with the final part of your first answer, meaning disinformation and communication.
Well, in terms of the Green Deal, I think that most of the agenda survive. We are on the. We will continue with all the commitments, with probably one exception that Madam President already announced, that there will be certain targeted amendments to address the problem of e-fuel. But the agenda is adopted, is approved, and is going to be implemented. But of course, with the implementation, it remains to be seen how it develops. Yeah, but so far there is no sign of pessimism that we are backtracking on what already been decided.
Thank you very much. Joanna Maćkowiak-Pandera, what would we, as Poland, like to showcase in the context of energy and the gas security during our presidency, and how can we make ourselves credible?
Thank you very much, Carolina, for the invitation. And I'm really glad to be here to share our views as we work on EU priorities since 1 year. And maybe I start with saying that the discussion about green transition is really not the discussion about colors, which many people would like to frame like this. So this is number one. Number two is that once we really focus on priorities, we should better understand where the challenges are. And generally what we face in Europe is structural energy deficit. So we don't have own fossil fuels, and the recent crisis which we experienced was just exactly because we are dependent on gas, coal, oil supplies. So this is something what we need to say loud and clear, that this energy crisis is not caused by the transition to renewables, but just the opposite. And this is something what also Draghi says in his report, that actually dependence on gas supplies and basically the entire electricity market design and the role of gas in setting the price has caused the crisis. And this is something which is very relevant. What I've observed also, being quite active in European discussion and talking to many stakeholders in Brussels, in other countries, is there are big hopes toward Poland. That generally, of course, there is this horrible crisis mood in the European discussion, where I think we really need some more optimism and really focus on the good things. And here I think what is of particular relevance, and this is a bit what Agata Łoskot-Strachota asked in the chat, that what the next energy and climate strategy should be. And I think it's exactly merging the energy security and climate crisis together, and also competitiveness. Because what what was the biggest mistake of the European member states was this mistake is maybe wrong said, because indeed 10, 20 years ago, the situation of global fossil fuel supplies, technology access and costs were a bit different. But since few years, we see a global tensions and supply chains constraint. So we should really focus on further collaboration within the EU, more integration of European energy markets, maybe common gas and fuel supplies, basically releasing the potential of renewables, because this is only one source of energy which can make us really independent apart from energy security, energy efficiency. So, and also what is really relevant, that Poland will propose priorities which could be of interest for other member states. And this is something what we need to have in our mind, that we should also see a bit what the agenda of European Commission might be. And in June 2025, there will be extremely relevant document discussed during European Council, which is a new energy security strategy for Europe. And I think we should really formulate new definition, what energy security currently means, in a sense that technologies are changing. So the last one was prepared in 2014, Energy Security Strategy, and it was shortly after Crimea annexation, and basically we failed in its implementation, or some member states failed. And I think that generally the approach of Poland toward energy security was not bad. It was right, actually, that we wanted to make us energy independent from Russian fossil fuel supplies. And it was really like amazing moment once the Baltic Pipe was put in place in September. On 27 September 2022, exactly in the moment when it was mostly needed, when the gas supplies from Russia were cut. And I think we are credible in saying what the new definition of energy security is, also in the context of critical minerals, declining role of fossil fuels, clean tech. And we should also, in the context of clean industrial deal, I think the most relevant thing is related with electricity price, because without lowering the prices on the EU level, indeed, all the competitiveness, but also climate policy will not fly, because it will only impose more cost. And in my view, there is a lot to be done. And also Draghi says in report, give his direction. And I think this direction is exactly doable and right. It's difficult because you need to change really force utilities to change their mind about how they actually gain profits. But this is something which is doable. But also I miss a bit the context of Ukraine and the war which is taking place just behind our borders. Just today, we are part of our team is in Kiev, and we are discussing exactly the collaboration energy climate with Ukraine. And I think our support toward the enlargement, toward also keeping the Russian fossil fuels out of European Union should be really the priority. So maybe I stop here. I generally think that there is a lot of positive things which we can offer to the European Union, exactly about energy security, energy climate security, but also a clean industrial deal focusing on electricity prices. Maybe one element which I forgot to mention is the social dimension, which is maybe the most relevant one. As Adrian said, also disinformation, but also acceptance and understanding why we need this transition is exactly to be less dependent on fossil fuels, to consume less energy, to lower our bill. This is the energy transition about. And next year in June, member states should prepare social climate plans to protect vulnerable households. And I think we should really take the lead on this in the European Union. So first of all, prepare it on time. And secondly, really to prepare a scheme how to protect vulnerable households, how not to freeze all the electricity prices, because freezing energy cost us 90 billion zloty in recent 2 years. So we cannot afford it anymore. It does not make sense to freeze the prices for everybody, but we should really protect vulnerable households and also to help them to consume less energy. And this is, and here I stop, thanks.
Thank you very much. We plan to address this in the second round, but it was very smart of you to mention it now so that Director Kondaszewski can hear that. Thank you very much for your intervention. And now off to Linda Culture. And Joanna already mentioned Ukraine, which offers a good segue to my question to you. About more geopolitical context of when Poland assumes our EU presidency.
Thanks so much, Carolina, and pleasure to be here. Indeed, I lead a small Brussels-based pan-European think tank called Strategic Perspectives, and it's good to be the Brussels person in this setting of Polish experts. So indeed, I wanted to take a step back and really look into the broader context of the political setting when the presidency starts. Needless to say, we'll have the US elections on the 5th of November, and it will be during the first day of the presidency that we will have the inauguration of a potential Trump or Harris presidency, and that will obviously inevitably also set the tone for the presidency quite a lot. Under a Trump scenario, we can obviously expect more tariffs, a tougher stance on military, a tougher stance on Ukraine, potentially, and there comes the bridge from Joanna's statement, and obviously he might sort of actually withdraw parts of the Inflation Reduction Act, and he might instead try to boost the fossil fuel exports, which is contrary to what was agreed in Dubai still last year, and also the EU's own intention to indeed move away from fossil fuels to be more energy secure. Whereas if we were to have a Harris scenario, then we could probably see her staying the course on a lot of policies that the current Biden administration has put in place, but also really continue the investment push quite heavily. And she will seek to make the American economy those that provides the clean tech leadership internationally. And that really brings us back to the competitiveness agenda, which will be at the core of the Polish presidency, because irrespective of who wins, there is a need to really boost investments in the European clean tech manufacturing, because China is still dominating the investment space, the manufacturing, and it's no longer a debate if these clean tech, so solar, wind, heat pumps or EVs are getting produced. It's more a question where, and it's really key for the Europeans to support their industrial sectors to stay competitive internationally, to avoid that we're too dependent on technology imports after we've just experienced how vulnerable we've been by being too dependent on energy security and energy imports from Russia, the way Joanna has set it out. So we really think it's actually in the Polish DNA to talk about competitiveness, to talk about innovation, to talk about investment, because Poland is one of the leading countries in that regard. And we've published a report just yesterday that compared the US, China, and the EU, but also in terms of job figures. And there Poland actually has the second biggest amount of jobs in the heat pump and renewable sectors. You might all know that, but as a German, I can say, show it more, be proud of these clean tech leadership, whereas where we saw that Poland was sort of can still improve is indeed the investment agenda. And that brings us back to what Adrian has said. It can't be that only Germany and France can afford to invest in the clean tech manufacturing. We need to see how the next European budget and other financial mechanisms can be much more targeted towards some of the Southern and Eastern European member states, indeed with the risk that the recovery funding is running out and there's no succeeding document. And this is where we really much see that the Competitiveness Fund and the Clean Industrial Deal can come to the forefront, and that will probably be announced under the Polish presidency, aware there's a Polish election debate, aware that once we're getting out of the Polish presidential elections, my own home country, Germany, might have an election debate. So it will not be the easiest political setting, but we really expect Polish leadership in that regard, especially at a moment where some of the other leaders are more focusing inside. So yes, I stop here for the first round. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So a lot of issues and expectations to address on your part, Director Kondaszewski. And to that basket, I would like to add the question about our stance, Polish stance on clean industrial deal, and how does Poland envision its own green industrial policy. And also, as the EU, as I mentioned in the beginning, the EU is considering a goal of 90% emissions reduction by 2040. What's the Polish government stance on that? And are we planning to address it during the presidency or maybe not?
Excuse me, Karolina, could you please repeat the question? I had some issues on my side.
Okay,
sorry.
So clean industrial deal, how does Poland envision its own green industrial policy? And the 90% reduction target, are we going to address it during presidency or not? And what's generally our stance about it?
Sure. May I please start by only reacting to what Joanna said about the priorities for presidency? I mean, because there are so many aspects that overlap with what we have in mind as priorities, like Ukraine for the start. Obviously, that is going to be a huge priority for Poland. For one, we want to help Ukraine survive the winter and then subsequent winters, because it's a long-term exercise. But we also want to start discussions on Ukraine's EU accession talks, especially in the energy sector, which is, as we see it, a pretty low-hanging fruit. So we really want to deliver on that. Energy security, obviously, it's going to be a priority, and we are ready for a debate sometime during our presidency on one of the councils. Competitiveness, I already mentioned that before, but also climate and climate security. In parallel with what we do on delivering ambitious climate policies, we also want to focus on climate security and the adaptation. This is another coin of the same problem. We need to be ready to fight floods and droughts that we have. Also in Poland, we had a time in Poland sometime in September where we had droughts in the north part of the country, where at the same time we had floods in the southern part of the country. So we are aware of the challenges, and we want to stimulate also European Commission to put forward EU adaptation plans on that. And I have a feeling that when it comes to many crises, European Union is pretty good at addressing them. So we are pretty optimistic in finding solutions that will be acceptable for everyone. As regards the EU clean industrial deal, I think I covered some of the areas where we think we could work on. Certainly helping industries to decarbonize in a more accessible manner is one of the priorities. I have a feeling that many industries lag behind when it comes to accessing technologies that would allow them to go that avenue pretty fastly. So we certainly want to help in that and have a broad discussion on what's possible at the EU level and what's not. I have a feeling that the mood across industries is rather towards going into that direction, but they also need to have support from both governments and the European Commission. The question of electricity prices for industries is of course crucial as well, and here I guess it can be done without a huge shake-up of the EU legislation, but here this is a rather question for the European Commission. I know that the European Commission does not have any plans to touch that during our presidency, so I think it's beyond us, and it's rather a question for Mrs. Smith. yeah, and when it comes to the last most difficult question, I think, about the target 2040 target, I mean, you pretty aware of our position. I think that we are going to work on that. Certainly, we try to facilitate the discussion, but we have very little information from the Commission on what is going to be opened when the Commission will at some point put forward the legislation. So we don't know the scope of the changes in the climate law, but we also don't know the timeline. We are not sure whether it's going to be like fast or not. And frankly speaking, we had a meeting with Commissioner Hoekstra yesterday, and I don't have much more clarity on that. I guess the Commission is still waiting for the new cabinet to form and then to decide on how fast this process should go. But as I said, I mean, we are ready to have a discussion on that. It's not going to be easy because the target is like extremely important, and as you know, it will have impacts on so many areas that it just needs our like a huge consideration and thinking about it. It doesn't have to be like very swift. We do have to discuss that and think about consequences, and because its impact is so huge, we also need a big political mandate to have that agreed. It cannot be against many member states. So we will facilitate, but yeah, this is the thinking that we have right now in Warsaw.
Okay, so thank you very much. I would like still to ask you several questions from our guests.
All right.
One, for example, from the former Director General at the European Commission for Agriculture, Jerzy Plewa. So about the agricultural sector. So in short, the question is, does Poland have constructive proposals in the field of agriculture, or will it rather continue to play the role of a blocker to changes leading to sustainable agriculture? So maybe let's start with this one.
Yeah, I would say that's a very good question, but I don't have an answer for that. I mean, it's as you probably know, it's not my area of responsibility. It's a question to Agriculture Minister, not to Minister of Climate. So I apologize, but I don't have information on that.
Okay, what would be the optimal new EU energy and climate strategy from the Polish perspective? So the question that Joanna already tried to address. Then what could Poland's role in the programs under Critical Materials Act could be, and what could Poland achieve?
Yeah, this is a very good question. I think the access to critical raw material is also a part of our approach towards energy security. I guess if we want to have an access to technologies, we also have to have access to critical raw materials, and the European Union should focus on that. And this will be part of our discussions between the Council and the European Commission. Unfortunately, the solutions are rather limited. We all know that we will at some point be, to a very large extent, dependent on external supplies when it comes to critical raw materials. So for that, I don't think if we could figure out a great solution, but we could, of course, try to establish partnerships with countries who are friends of the European Union. And for that, we need strong EU diplomacy to establish those contacts and to negotiate deals which are good for both sides. We also might have to reach to the instruments that we have in our disposal, which is, for example, common purchases. They worked pretty well when it comes to gas deliveries. Maybe we could also expand this this instrument to also buy together critical raw materials. I mean, I know that there are discussions right now whether to use that instrument for imports of hydrogen, but maybe we could also expand it to critical raw materials. That could be one possible avenue. Thank
So
you.
the last two questions out of many questions to you. So I'm just playing the role here of the presidency of this discussion. So the first one, is there any anticipated support for SMEs? Because you were mentioning supporting companies, Polish companies. So is there any anticipated specific support for SMEs in Poland to implement the requirements of the Green Deal? If so, what kind of support and within what time frame? And the second one from Professor Renata Mieńkowska-Norkiene, isn't the context of floods a strong argument to intensify the implementation of the European Green Deal?
So maybe starting with the second one. I mean, it is, and we certainly are going to continue implementation of certain elements of that, but also in areas which were left there without any actions, we want to continue. Like, for example, those plans on climate security and adaptations. I think the European Commission and the European Union in general didn't have a good approach, and we want to change that and continue works to be ready for the consequences of climate change. So I think in those areas we will go even further than originally Green Deal aimed at. As regards the question on supporting the small and medium enterprises, I think entrepreneurs will find many things for them in our approach towards industry in general. And if we discuss the question of electricity prices or heating prices for that matter, this is something that also is problematic for SMEs in Poland. If we discuss the impacts of ETS2 and whether we should postpone it or not, this is also a matter for SMEs. So they should really get involved into discussions on that. But also, and that was mentioned by Mario Draghi as well, the issue of burdens and red tape for SMEs. Probably Director Smyk will tell you more about it, but the intention of the European Commission is to cut some of the administrative burdens for entrepreneurs. And here, like the monitoring or reporting obligations that companies have because of certain EU policies are good examples of on where we can cut those burdens. So I think there's no decision yet on what to tackle, but my advice to SMEs is to go and talk with the representatives of the Commission. Go and talk with representatives of the government, because if you have some good ideas, I think there are many people of many institutions that could take them forward and try to address.
Thank you very much for this call, and also sorry for the monopolization, but it's just temporary. So thank you, Director Kondaszewski, for being with us and so bravely answering all these questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to be back into the room with other ministers. So thank you so much. It was very good to see you. Have a good afternoon. Bye bye.
Thank you very much. And now we'll continue, and I would like to ask Director Smyk, who was already addressed several times by Director Kondaszewski. But my question is about the Clean Industrial Deal, which is being developed and also discussed here already. And it has been already attracting attention also beyond our seminar, but there is a sense that it's replacing Green Deal with an industrial one. How do you relate to? How do the two relate to each other? How can we connect energy and climate transformation and competitiveness that we have been mentioning throughout this debate already many times, and also as regards Draghi report, also already mentioned several times, is his proposal for further energy transformation a leap forward or a rational solution?
Yes, so it's a lot of questions in one.
Just one.
Yeah. But before I answer, indeed, I would like to refer what Director Kondaszewski said, because indeed, on many occasions, he called on the European Commission, rightly so. I can believe that from the incoming presidency, the knowledge on the agenda is crucial. Otherwise, it's very difficult to plan. But just to give you a bit of the cuisine, so. Indeed, in the normal circumstances, the presidency can expect that well in advance the Commission publishes its annual legislation program, normally around October for the next year. So it facilitates the preparation. But in this regard, as we are in this transition process, every 5 years, this process is delayed. So as long as there is a new commission, there cannot be any new commitments and information on what's going to happen and when. So if everything goes according to the plan, only in December, the annual program of the commission will be published with all list of initiatives and possible or indicative timing. I can imagine that it's a bit late for the presidency, but I have full confidence in the competence of the colleagues. And from my experience, I used to work in the council, first in the cabinet of the president of the European Council, the European Council, and then in the Secretary General of the Council. So the presidency is very much on the quality of the officials, not necessarily on the knowledge of the file. Of course, I mean, we normally rely on experts, but I have full confidence that the Polish presidency will be able to deliver even without this comfort of knowledge that will on what's on the agenda that will come a bit later than usually. And also the critical and raw materials were mentioned. So just to tell you that, of course, the Commission has it on its radar screens, and the previous or the present Commission signed around 35 agreements with partners on hydrogen and on the critical raw materials. So and we will continue to do more. As for the budget and support, budgetary support, so you know quite well that the discussion has just started, and we cannot say more. In terms of the details, who is going to get how much and when, definitely premature to speculate. But I would like to add one element to the budget, as we are also in the process of transformation, and we are also drawing conclusions from what has happened in previous years. And I refer to the COVID-19 pandemic, and of course to the war of aggression, Russia's aggression in Ukraine. So definitely the new budget, this is my assumption, will be much more flexible. And this is how the discussion, I think, is conducted, not to fix the whole amounts for 7 years, but to keep certain flexibility. So we will, so the Commission and the EU will be equipped to react during the 7 years period to the phenomena that we were not in the position to predict. And indeed, last point of the SMEs, the regulation, there are lots of promises and lots of indications that indeed we are going to make things simpler, shorter, faster, and the agenda of deregulation is coming back. There is this competitiveness test that is going to be applied before new legislation is foreseen, so not to overburden the companies and SMEs in particular with all administrative, let's say, obligations. But indeed, I cannot say more because this discussion is ahead of us. But also referring to what been said, this is indeed the moment to come up with postulates. So the Commission is in the listening mode. So the Commission is not there yet to tell you what we are going to do. We are very much listening on what you have to say and what's your concern and what's your proposal. Yeah, because this is the ideal moment to take it into account, and it is going to be much more difficult to change it once the proposal is on the table, when you need to have an agreement of all member states in the Council. So this is actually before I'm able to answer the question. So you said that the Green Deal is replacing the industrial deal. This may seem so, but I'll tell you, and I repeat more or less what I have said at the very beginning, that what President von der Leyen said, that actually even in a much stronger words, that the success of the new Commission will depend on the implementation, among other things, will depend on the implementation of the Green Deal. So it's not that we are kind of closing this chapter and opening the new one that it's called Clean Industrial Deal. No, this is the pillar of the same structure. And I'm very much supporting Joanna that said about this triangle of the EU strategy, that where, of course, climate is one angle, security is another angle, and the competitiveness is also part of this equation. And I think the Commission is moving in that direction, that we will have more balance and more pragmatic approach. So one deal does not replace another deal. We are simply moving forward. We are building the structure, and we are trying to draw conclusions from what maybe was missed, but definitely for what people would like to see. So, and then of course, green versus clean, definitely shared goals, definitely complementary focus, and definitely integrated approach. So with the aim to have a comprehensive strategy that tick all the boxes, namely decarbonization, technology innovation, security, sustainable development and growth. And what you also ask about the whether we can have a climate transformation with competitiveness. I think there are lots of being said on this with the Draghi report, and Jana already mentioned, and not only her, the issue of energy bills. So actually bringing energy prices down is the best gift you can offer to the European economy, and this goes without saying. But there are other solutions like development of electricity or, of course, industrial innovation. This is meant to improve the competitiveness of the whole EU. And maybe, as I'm talking already for a while, so as for Draghi report, it's of course food for thought. This is how it was designed, but many of the ideas were already present in those missions letters for the commissioners that I already referred to. But in terms of how I perceive this concept, I believe I see the Draghi report as a ambitious, but in the same time kind of pragmatic recipe. So you have very far-reaching strategy with high ambition and the famous 800,000 billion annually. It's a shocking figure for innovation, but also approach to accelerating technology decarbonization, fostering innovation. So this vision is there, but also the way or proposals to address medium and long-term challenges are also present, namely, indeed, high energy costs, regulatory market reforms, or practical proposals. So I think it's an interesting point of reference, but it's only the report and needs to be discussed and needs to be processed within the Commission machinery, but also by the member states. And you've seen the respective councils are discussing the report as again source of inspiration. And I'm coming back, and this is exactly last sentence, to this timing for reflection. This is exactly what we should do. And if there are any complaints about Draghi reform, the report that does not include Polish perspective sufficiently. So I would like to very much invite those who have ideas or have solutions also to come up with such proposals before the new commission is established, so it can be taken on board already now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I, of course, have a follow-up question, but in reality, it's a Q&A question. And maybe already at this point, I would like to ask all the panelists if you, before the final round, the fourth round, can look into our Q&A, because there are so many questions, and I would like to ask you all of them, but I'm not sure if you, for example, I can or are able to say what's the answers. Therefore, maybe I will ask you in the next round to just tell us which questions you may address by yourself. So now I'm asking the questions from the registration, so so everyone could ask a question when registering for our conference. So to Director Katarzyna Smyk-Styl, what actions in Polish agriculture are most crucial for implementing the Green Deal, and how can they be applied with sacrificing our competitiveness?
I hope I'm not occupying the microphone for too long. And of course, again, the agriculture is one of the sectors that is fully or in a big extent affected by the new agenda. I'm not going to offer you a detailed answer, because again, we are ahead of the decisions, ahead of the final proposals. But what I can say that the president invited the stakeholders and the farmers and the people that are concerned by but also customers actually, to the discussion about the future of European agriculture. Such a strategic dialogue was initiated after the protests of the farmers that we've seen in the spring. And this report has been published and is available, so for people can also report and express views. And the president announced that very soon, but again, we are operating in this 100 days, the first days of the commission mandate. So if the commission is appointed as of 1st of December, until 10th of March, we can expect those initiatives to be published and presented. And one of them is the vision for European agriculture. And I cannot say much on the content, but what we hear when we see various comments. So again, I can expect that the issue of the income of farmers can be addressed, that there can be incentives and support for those farmers who would like to produce in line with nature and biodiversity, that there may be quite likely also proposals for farmers regarding reduction of bureaucracy and so on and so forth. So I cannot comment more in terms of the details because these decisions are again ahead of us, but I really would like to encourage our farmers and our stakeholders in this sector to be vocal on what they think and what they want and what they expect from this commission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now off to Joanna. Already you and Director Kondaszewski introduced this topic in your first intervention. So the energy transition, while necessary, comes with social and economic challenges. Particularly for countries heavily reliant on fossil fuels, also historically. So how should Poland approach this social dimension of the transition during our presidency? Can we do something specific as regards the just transition? What policies or initiatives can we promote to ensure this transition? Just one.
Thank you. Generally, I think that this wording of just transition needs to be a bit more specific, because I've noticed within last years that it was actually occupied by different groups like miners and automotive industry, where finally it's not entirely just. Once within the transition, you only support certain groups which still benefit a lot and are rich enough to cope with the change. So this is a bit something what in also our discussion with European Commission, I've noticed that the just transition dimension should be broadened now, in a sense that it should exactly see vulnerable households, also people who just don't have enough high income to really invest in energy transition. So they need both financial but also technical assistance from the state. And this will be of the biggest importance because, as Katarzyna said, I think the biggest challenge for the next years to come will be implementation of Green Deal. So we have set several ambitious targets, and in case of Poland, I think we are really lagging behind in implementation, also because we do not have analytical analytical centers which could support government in taking the right decision. I mean, right in which sense? So basically support implementation. So I'm a bit worried that.
But what about analytical centers like yours or Linda's?
I mean, but we are independent analytical think tanks. So indeed, I mean, those developed in recent years, and they cover to some extent the gap, but we are 20 people and or actually a bit more. And in order to be really effective in implementation, you need to really have big professional groups covering all topics, energy efficiency, transport, agriculture, energy. And this is something, and industry. I'm a bit, I think that Poland generally should avoid coming up with the topics in which we are still weak. And in my view, industry narrative is really good one. And as Adrian said, industry contributes at the level of 25% to our GDP, but the challenge is that recent governments, and including the current one, are not dealing with industry at all. So at all is probably insulting for some ministers because I already experienced it, that they feel then attacked, but really like decarbonization of industry, and that Poland has the highest electricity prices for industry in Europe is a big problem. And also the carbon footprint is a big problem for our industry because of reporting of CO2. So generally, this is, I think, really big topic. But what I would really, because you asked me about the social dimension, I think we need more communication. So first of all, what is this? What is the reason why we transform, why we need to transform is exactly because we have already energy poverty now in Poland. So it's 15% of society who already now cannot afford proper level of like cannot cover or the expenditures to cover their energy demands are already now very high. And we are not doing anything for those households almost. So there are some programs like NFOŚ has this program for energy poor people. But generally, once you really live in some village, you are a pensioner, you really will not invest 150,000 zloty in your energy renovation. You need advice, you need support in project management. Even filling out the application form is a challenge. So those things, in my view, once Poland wants to be credible, and I also think the social dimension is enormously relevant, is exactly to go now on the implementation side to create energy efficiency technical advice on the state level, because now you have free market basically, and you don't have any place to go for neutral technical advice. And in my view, once we will progress with this, then also we will develop tools how to protect vulnerable households, but then abandon this freezing of electricity prices, which is extremely costly, and many actually rich people benefit from this. So it's nonsense. Then we can really start to be the leader also in the European Union, how the energy transition can be made just. And generally justice, it's also about clean air, I think, because it's not also very just once you live in a place where you need to breathe really the air because somebody else is just not taking care, or sometimes that not have possibilities to invest in clean energy sources. So it's also not just. And I think that concluding that generally this justice should be really much broader. And even today we will publish a paper on this, exactly what the justice means in the context of so-called social agreement with miners, which in my view is a bit not exactly what we need to do at this stage.
Thank you. Very important topic. And still, I have some questions from the registration Q&A. I will just ask 2 out of many, all at once. So the first one, the single energy market enhances system security and lowers average prices in Europe. How can cross-border exchange be increased? And the second, how can Poland leverage the energy transition to enhance its energy security? So that was basically already addressed. Joanna? We don't hear you.
Sorry, I just lost a bit connection. So what was the question? I
The
was
single
reading the
energy-
question, sorry.
The single energy market enhances system security and lowers average prices in Europe. How can cross-border exchange be increased? It's asked by a representative of Polenergia.
I mean, generally, the trans-border electricity exchange lowered the prices in Poland. So this is the only one of the measures how to support our energy security, in a sense, also covering like flexibility of our system. It lowers the prices. So I assume once the question is asked by Polenergia, it's also the question of Ukraine, which is a very complex one, also in the context, but I just participated even last week in the discussion exactly on this, and it seems that electricity exchange with Ukraine will be increased in next years to come. And generally, I think that expanding the electricity infrastructure makes sense. Does not mean that we will abandon our own generation. Because Poland is the 5th biggest country in the EU, we have to have own generation. But let's say 15% of electricity could be a subject of exchange. And we had several examples in recent years where we could see that actually sometimes some countries help us and sometimes we help the others to really support once there is electricity shortage. But I saw also the question from Kasper Twisłowski and on ban of electric engine of the other participants. So generally, I think ETS2 is a topic where because of redistribution cost among different member states. So this is main challenge. So carbon pricing is extremely relevant to have it in place, but the challenge is that the price is unified on the EU level and the level of income, but also the state of play, like starting point is completely different in different member states. And particularly those located in Eastern and Central Europe are just in worse starting position. So social climate funds, which are part of ETS2, are certainly the must. So we need to do it anyhow. But generally, ETS2 will be political decision, and we will see what will come. And on ban on electric vehicle engine, I just, frankly speaking, I think this is most of the political issues I've ever seen. I don't think it's really automotive industry only. It's also oil suppliers who are worried about basically a declining market. And I just sometimes participate, or actually I participated, then I stopped talking on social media. And then when the argument I hear is that somebody who is against just loves the engine sound, actually I like it too, but you can play it with YouTube in that context. And still actually it's not about banning completely combustion engine car, but production of the new one in 10 years time, which means we have still a lot of time to prepare, to build infrastructure, to use to this model. And if we fail, then we can revise it. So abandoning it now, it's for me just making step back.
Maybe one more question about the cars in 2035. So when they are already produced but unsold ahead of the 35, can they still be sold after for the first time, not used once?
Oh, this is something what I don't know, but I don't think somebody will really exclude the, I don't think it is regulated that you cannot resell the car. I think that you can still buy a new combustion engine car in 2034 and then use it for the next 20 years, as we do in Europe, in Poland, because we have actually our average age of car is 14 years now. So it's still, we can go with combustion engine once we will want to. And if not, then there are some other possibilities.
Thank you. Linda, so I will ask you two questions at once. So the first one has already been discussed a lot, but I would like to also ask your about your take about pairing competitiveness with the ambitious climate agenda of the EU, also in view of the Draghi report. And if you have anything from the report that you would deem that should be prioritized by the European Union and or Poland. So it's the first one.
Yeah, for me, it really goes hand in hand. And I think that's where I'm a bit concerned if some talk about the 2040 target only as a climate target, whereas it's really about predictability and planning security for industry. So if I hear from some of the companies that they take investment decisions now that are valid for the next 10 to 15 years, they need to understand the trajectory of where it goes. And that I think also links nicely to the question in the chat on why Poland might have seen lower investments than Germany or France. Well, Germany and France have clear pathways on how to decarbonize the economy, which translate into pathways on we need to scale up our renewables. In the German case, it's nuclear. In the French case, we need to make our electricity cheaper. We need to sort of transform our entire mobility system. We want to advance on the industry decarbonization. And these are all areas where they have started planning a bit more than your previous government might have. And this is where I think this comes act a nice sequence together with the Clean Industrial Deal, because we need to see where the investments go, and we need to see a bit more pragmatism. And I think that's sort of a comment back to the Commission, that at time when we see a lot of reduced budget or fiscal conservatism or austerity, we can't invest in all technologies at the same time. So in most countries, electrification is cheaper than carbon capture and storage technologies. In most countries, renewables are cheaper than building new nuclear plants. And we can't assume that one day we plug out a coal power plant and the next day we plug in the nuclear plant. If you look at the last one that has been built in Finland, it was meant to be done within 4 years. It took 8 or 9 even, and now they need to regularly regulate it down because the renewables are so cheap in the system. So we also need to sort of pragmatically look into what makes economic sense and what makes sense at the time scale that we want to see the change. And I think this is where the debate about 2040 comes back, because it will force you to take some technology choices. I'm all for technology neutrality. I'm all for countries deciding their own energy mix, but let's really look at it through the economic and timing lens. And this is also where you can see, even in some recent polling, that Polish society is aware that some of these floods and droughts could have been prevented if the government would actually step up on climate. So if 70% of Polish society that have been asked really wants to bring that to the forefront, then this is an opportunity for the government to do it, and not for the planet or for the climate, but it's for the jobs, it's for the investments, and actually have a good competitive economic base, which then links to another question in the chat, which is indeed linked on how a decision to weaken the CO2 standards on cars, and the way Joanna just set it out, could also affect the battery sector. Yes, of course, because if investors think, oh, maybe the Europeans are not actually serious about their targets, they'll put their money into China and the US. It's a decision that goes very fast and is just the sort of pragmatic response to some of the political leaders going a bit in a zigzag course. And then the investments and jobs will be outside Europe. And then we get the big risk of deindustrialization, because it hasn't happened, because the policies were too weak. So I think that's, for me, the area where you can see how competitiveness and the climate trajectories go hand in hand, because it's about the investments and jobs.
You are muted.
Sorry. Yes, exactly. I wanted to say that Joanna would like to jump in.
Yes, I just want to comment exactly, because this is very relevant point, which Linda mentioned, exactly on our potential in clean tech, because Poland in 2022 was the biggest, fastest growing heat pump market in the world. And actually, following the consequences of the Russian invasion, Ukraine, then cutting off Russian fossil fuels, many investors made the decision to locate their plants, heat pumps plants in Poland. So we became also the largest investment place for heat pumps market in Europe, which I think is exactly the way to go, because once you take a look that we still have around 3 million houses which burn coal and pollute the air, it would be really one direction to go, because gas is in many cases not the alternative. There is no gas network. So what else you can actually do? So, and I'm just missing in this discussion in Poland really pragmatic approach to the investments which are needed. Generally, we talk a lot about end of something, about why we need to do it, but then we don't see the entire potential which actually comes from investments related with this. And there is huge investment need in Poland, and generally energy efficiency, electrification, renewables, what also Linda said, is just one of the largest markets in Europe. And I'm just, you know, sometimes I go to other country and I hear that people ask me, oh my God, how you achieve this huge development, because the entire narrative is just opposite. So, and I'm just thinking, really, why we don't use this potential? Poland now produces half of its electricity from coal. When I started to deal with energy transition 15 years ago, it was 80%. Now it's 48 in September. And why we are actually not really showing it to the world that, and why we cannot decide what is the right way to go. So this is a bit question mark, which I have at the end probably of the discussion, but also like more positive, optimistic approach toward investment and toward the future would be really needed, because this depressive mood is really discouraging from discussion.
Thank you, Joanna. So coming back to Linda, so as I promised, one more question. So Ursula von der Leyen promised, probably also Director Smyk will wish to respond to that in the final round. So Ursula von der Leyen promised this will be the investment commission in her political guidelines. However, we are seeing challenges in funding of the green transition. So I would like in this context to ask you, how do you see the EU's ability to finance its ambitious climate and industrial policies?
I think there's a lot of room to improvement to start off with that, but it's also, I think the overall share of investments need to shift more towards the clean tech. And I think we need to become a bit more surgical at what moment in time, what industry needs what support. That sounds like a, well, of course, answer, but it's not. So the Europeans are very good in the sort of research and development phase, so you can scale up projects, have a lot of startups, but then when they actually scale up, that's where we have an investment gap, because that's not where the private investments go, and that we would need more funding. So very much to the sort of, we have a lot of startups that now produce the clean tech. How can we make them bigger, especially in competition with US and China? It's also about this sort of simplification of the funding structure. When I talk to companies, especially in your regions or the regions themselves, they lost track of what they can get from the Innovation Fund, the Modernization Fund, and the merit of funding. And it might not have been very easy for them that then also some of these funds were renamed in the wake of the pandemic or in response to the war. So sort of better support to companies and regions to actually access the funding. We once called it like a one-stop shop for funding, but like almost you need a hotline where they can call and say, this is our project. How can we get support? The other thing that seems to still stand in the way is the better matching of national and European funding, where like, the union exists for a while. How can it be so complicated for a company? So it's not only about more investments, and Draghi talked about 800 billion, but it's also sort of how we can fastly get that to the right places that we want to see. And that is not only true for the industry, and that bridges me to the questions on the ETS2 that were raised to us in the question, is also to households. So we need to be able to better support them to have the ability to buy a heat pump, to have the ability to renovate their house, so that the sort of electric vehicles are not only for the rich elite, but for every household that might choose to do so. And I hear a lot of concerns about the ETS2, and it doesn't help that 10 European countries will have elections in 2027 when it starts, because that tends to be the moment when you, as a government, you don't want to have electricity prices or household prices go through the roof. But then let's be serious about it, and let's hear actual proposals also from the Polish presidency of what we can address, how fast, because you want to avoid that it sort of drags on and come 2026, we still haven't found a solution. So a plea to the Polish presidency and the Commission to actually start working on it now. And final point on the EU leadership on climate, we'll face a COP29 and G20 where we'll see a lot of big G20 countries putting their 2035 climate targets forward. And to come back to the statement by the ministry initially, we don't even know the European timing for when the Commission will come forward with anything. So we'll face a world where actually the countries like China, the US, Canada, Japan, Indonesia, and I can list a few more, will be ready with their climate plans for 2035. And the European Union hasn't even started discussing it. And I stop here. Thanks, Karolina.
Thank you so much. So the last voice will be Katarzyna Smyk from the European Commission. I wanted to ask you about the target 2040, but maybe just feel free to say after all these interventions what you feel that is still not said, and what's your take?
Thank you. I have to start by actually agreeing fully with Joanna about what she said in terms of the narrative and in terms of the positive messages. You know, Poland is a great example of the country that transformed itself during the last 20 years in an extremely unexpected manner. So there is a huge adaptation skill and transition potential in this country. And I think we are facing the same opportunity. So indeed, we need to use the language that would actually offer certain vision of transformation for the people to improve their lives, because no one wants to, live in a cold house paying high energy prices. So no one would subscribe for such an option. So we need to offer solutions, and we need to offer the vision. So I'm there for also in terms of communication. And just for your information, at present we have in our headquarters, just another office next to mine, seminar about innovative commune, when we are discussing the building directive, how we are going to support the communes, how we are going to explain this particular piece of legislation that is very difficult, but also to provide necessary support and information. 90% target, I cannot add much. You know where we are, waiting for the Commission to come up with proposals and to come up with a calendar. It's a bit, if I can be more of the record, I can easily imagine that the Commission can make this kind of calculation with which presidency they would like to cooperate on this particular file, whether it's a Polish presidency or maybe the Danish presidency. And this calculations are kind of legitimate, because the presidency is about advancing the work and about building consensus and about building, moving the things forward. So it's also up to the presidency, and because this is about the Polish presidency, to decide what file take on board and where the Polish presidency wants to go. And I can easily imagine that there are files when the Poland prefers to be a member state rather than the presidency. But this is a bit of a cuisine of the process. So thank you very much. This is all from me.
Thank you very much. So we discussed so many topics, and as we see in our Q&A chat, so many are still left for discussion. It shows that many such debates and seminars are still needed. I would like to thank all our great speakers. So Katarzyna Smyk, Adrian Kondaszewski, Joanna Maćkowiak-Pandera, and Linda Culture, for your great interventions and inputs and insights. And also great thank you to all our guests for being here with us. Thank you, and I wish you all a great afternoon.